Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you again for joining us here at Baptized and Clueless. I'm your host, Yusuf, with my co-host here, Wesley. Wesley, how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Yusuf.
Good to hear, good to hear. Today we have a special guest, a friend of mine, actually a friend of mine through my wife, who's a coworker, and his name is Dennis Ma. Now, Dennis Ma is a husband, a father of a girl and two dogs, and also an elder at his church. Everyone, warm welcome for our friend Dennis Ma, please.
Woohoo!
Thanks for having
Woo!
me.
Dennis, how are you doing today, man?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. So Dennis, as I alluded in the beginning that I know you through my wife, but I never got to know your walk with God story.
Mm,
So take us and the listeners as to how it all started for you. Where would you like to begin at?
yeah, for sure. And this all began in grade eight.
Really?
So in
Mm,
grade eight, I was in the middle of a move. So moving from Burlington to Mississauga, and you know how moves go. Moves can be pretty messy at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the
mm,
day. And so my parents, they said, you know what? Stay with your best friend for the next 2 months while we move everything over, we get
mm,
school registrations done, we, get some light renovations done. And then when you're here, when we move, then, you don't have to be in the mess of it all.
Can I just say
I'm like,
shout out
okay.
to your best friend? 2 months?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Huge, huge blessing,
Yeah.
honestly. And
mm,
if that didn't happen, I don't think it would have put me in a relationship with God.
Wow. God's plan.
God's
yep,
plan.
yep.
And now for context, my entire family is Buddhist. I'm the
Oh,
only Christian in my entire family.
wow. I
Wow.
did not know that.
Yeah, yeah, only Christian. And, and it's funny to the point where my grandmother bribed me with money, $100 to not go to church.
Oh
Grandma
man.
lowballed you.
I know. Oh, dude, for eternal freedom, why? But yeah, and so in grade eight, my best friend, his family's entirely Christian. All of them are Christian.
Hmm.
Even his grandparents, his extended family. And so, for them, I knew they were Christian, but I didn't really understand what that meant, right?
Hmm.
And like, okay, it's a religion. I have a religion, and we do our own things, and that's okay, right? And
Right.
even at the time, I didn't quite understand Buddhism because Buddhism, I think, and this might be an overgeneralization,
Mm.
Buddhism in the newer generation, it's a cultural thing, not so much a religious thing, if that makes
Okay.
sense,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
It's,
Mm,
you know, there are certain holidays, there are certain times of the year where we would practice certain things because it was just in the culture to do so.
mm,
Um, and so with that in mind, none of us, even myself, not even my parents, like we didn't really dive into like the entire understanding and religion of, okay, we're in this to escape the wheel of fate. We're
Okay.
right, but we
Hmm.
were just doing things because again, it's our culture,
Right.
it's how we were raised, and so we have certain practices just because we grew up that way. So when I was living over at my best friend Matt's uh, house for
Shout out to
two
Matt.
months, shout out to Matt, and he his family was so different in a good way.
Yeah.
And so his family dynamics were so different from mine, night and day. Not to say that my parents are bad.
Hmm. Of course.
Um, and it was so interesting to see how they prayed with one another. They even the topics that they talk about, like it's not just how was your day? It's just I struggled with this today and I need help.
Really?
Yeah.
mm,
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
it was so different. And I'm like, what is so different about this family where they can come together and be so close,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
right? That's something that I wanted, right? Where I'm like, okay, in my household, dinner was ready. You can kind of come and grab food whenever you wanted, and you kind of either go back to your room or you keep working or whatever have you. You can eat and do homework, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't really like a defined let's all come together and eat, right? And
Right.
talk about our days, but it was just, food's there whenever you need it.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing this dynamic was just so different and got me so interested as to what is it? Is it just this family or is there something more?
Good question.
And yeah, yeah. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I was living with them and I wasn't thinking too hard about it. And I'm like, I'll probably see something that has, whether it's their family history or just how they were raised or something that will give me an indication of, what is so different.
Mm-hmm.
But in the midst of all that, of just, regular grade 8 life, which at the time was very comfortable,
Yeah, exactly.
right? You didn't have to think too hard about life. You don't have to think about, stress of work and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in the midst of all of that, every Sunday, this family would invite me to church. I'm like, hey, no pressure. Like,
Yeah.
would you like to join us for church Sunday morning? We can go out and you can attend and you can join like the youth program, all that stuff. I'm like, I'm good. Because I was comfortable. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need to wake up super early on a weekend. Like, no, I'm here to sleep in on the weekend. I'm down for waking up early on a school day.
Right.
On the weekend, like this is
That's
my
too
time.
much.
That's right. That's right. And I would do this every Sunday. And now I think it was the third last or the second last Sunday, or sorry,
Mm-hmm.
third last or the second last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was invited to go to a passion play, and I don't know
Mm.
if you guys are familiar with a path or
Yes,
what a
we
passion
are.
play is. Okay, and with this passion play, it was a Friday night, so I didn't have any excuses. No excuses. It's like, yeah, it's just a stage play. You can come and just check it out. I'm like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? Sure, I'll go check it out. And before this, again, no contextual understanding of what
What it is.
religion is, what
Mm-hmm.
Christianity is, who Jesus was, why is he so important? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I go in and first of all, huge production, huge production. Um, this is at a white church in a rich area in Burlington. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like there's a lot of money here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, with the story that was told, it made sense as to why this family was so different. And
Mm.
everybody, especially in this church, because it's not just this family that was operating that way, that the church felt very welcoming. Like I
Oh,
didn't
that's good.
feel pressured to join something. I didn't feel pressured to be like, oh, you have to be a Christian as you're here. Like, what do you mean you're not Christian? Like, there's no
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
like that
Mm-hmm.
there. So I felt so welcomed. I felt so warm. Um, and, going to this passion play and seeing the heartbreaking story of Jesus, I'm like, okay, I understand that. There's someone out there that just loves humanity so much
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
that they're willing to let their own son die. And the son didn't abandon his mission either. The son
No.
said, yeah, this is important enough to make this happen. And at the end of that passion play, a altar call was there, right? And for some people who might be a hardcore atheists, they're like, I got him.
Yeah.
That's how they get you. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
case. And I saw, yeah, like this makes sense now. This is why this family is so different.
Wow.
And they're modeling the love of Christ in their
Yep.
everyday.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have this love, they're willing to take me on for 2 months,
Yeah.
to pay for me, to take care of me, to, help me through just the day to day in general.
Mm-hmm.
And, because that love is so beautiful, I went up and said, yeah, yes, please to Jesus.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
now the, you know, the part that wasn't so good
Mm-hmm.
was that, that was the end of my 2 months, right? This is
You're right
the
at the end.
second or
Yeah.
third last weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had went to church the next few weekends, I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm starting to understand a little bit. I'm hungry for more.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the end of it, I just had a Bible in hand and I was in a new city, no new friends, no understanding as to, which church to go to and how to get connected, whatever.
Right.
Right. Because, once you start going into a church, you learn that, oh, what do you mean there's a Presbyterian church? What is
The
that? What do you mean there's an
denominations.
Alliance church?
Yes.
Are they the same or are they different?
Right.
So I just put, I read like, I think Matthew a little bit and I just put it down and be like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
know how to Google this.
So hold on, before you get into Matthew, did you have a talk with your parents and let them know what took place? How did they react?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they didn't react all that much. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. Um, but because they knew it was just like one or two times, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
not gonna think much of it.
Right.
And so we just kind of left it alone, and I left it alone because, like, okay, well, if I can't get reconnected, then I'll just go back to doing whatever. And so it was
Right.
back to that comfortable life, right? Um, just enjoying playing games, going outside, so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. Just, regular grade 8 life at the end of it, right? So, flash forward um,
Go
to
to
high
Matthew.
school, right? And so in high school now, this is around grade 10-ish. Um, this is when I got to know my girlfriend, now wife, right? And
Woohoo.
she was originally Catholic, but turned Christian through her friends. Um, and then they start to actually invite me to go to church, right? But it wasn't to Sunday mornings; it was to Friday nights. I'm just like, okay, that's how they're gonna
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
me, just like before. It's full circle. But it was Friday night youth night. So youth nights, it's just you go hang out in the gym, you play
Yeah.
some games, you do a little bit of a Bible study, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was so interesting because thinking in hindsight, I was resistant, right? I was
Mm.
resistant to going to church at first because I didn't want that change. Like I'm like, oh,
Mm.
so comfortable. I'm
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good. Like I do my homework on time. In fact, earlier than on time because
Mm-hmm.
the earlier I can get it done, the more time I had to play or do whatever.
For yourself. Yeah.
That's it. And so I was just so comfortable with, you know what? I'm gonna live my life that way it is, and I don't really need to change. Like I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mhm.
then, through all of this, you know, I was thinking in my head, like I mean, I said yes before, so why am I
Right.
saying
What's the
no now,
difference? Mm-hmm.
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why was I struggling with that so hard? And so after a couple times of just making excuses, I said, you know what, I'll go. I'll check it out. I'm not being preached at. I'm just going to play volleyball. You know, it's not a trap, right? Like my girlfriend's gonna be there. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, so I started attending Friday nights. It was fun. Again, as mentioned, like no pressure. The youth pastor was and is amazing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, got to talking a little bit more about who I was, where did I come from, what was my experience with Christianity, if I had any experience.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it got to the point where instead of just going to one Friday night, it was every Friday night.
Oh
Didn't go
wow.
to Sunday yet. Didn't go to Sunday yet, but um, going every Friday night. And then it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I have a car. I can finally drive. So
Mm.
I don't have an excuse to not go on Sundays.
It's true.
Yeah.
And so started going to Sundays. We started to do, we had a youth worship and a English ministry worship.
Okay.
So I went to the youth worship and things kept snowballing to the point where I'm like, okay, like my love and my understanding for God is coming back alive. Like this
Mm.
is exactly what I started to experience in grade 8, but now experiencing in grade 10, 11, 12. Um, and yeah, started to serve at church, started to
Oh, that's so
volunteer at
good.
church.
So good.
Um, yeah, like it was just like, I'm on fire for God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's interesting when we think about baptism. I didn't understand the concept of baptism. Like, okay, like why do I have to, go through the whole ritual of baptism? Like, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if I earnestly believe that I am been saved, then that's good enough, is it
Mm-hmm.
not? So it was something that I was really grappling with. And this was when I was in university, right? And
Okay.
in university, it's so easy to make excuses where I'm like, I don't have the time
Yeah.
because I got all these assignments to do, or I
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
need
yeah.
to,
Mm-hmm.
meet this grade or whatever have you. Um, and so you just get so caught up in your life, where, you know, it's so easy to be without God.
Mhm.
And this is in university, I was serving less. Like I wasn't on the worship team. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
doing as much high school fellowship counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was more about, I'm just going to get through school and then I'll have time again.
Oh boy, that sounds
Right?
familiar.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to do this stage of my life because it's demanded of me. And by demanded, I mean culturally demanded of me.
Right, right.
Um, and I will go back to serving God right after that. But God hit me with a whirlwind when, my youth pastor said, you know what, maybe it's time to talk about it. Like, why do you not want to be baptized? Or at least what's holding you back? Not so much why do you not, but what's holding you back?
Right.
Mhm.
Um, and he shared with me that baptism is not so much, you have to be baptized to be saved.
Right.
But baptism is that testimonial where
Mm.
you tell the public, like, this is why you believe
Yeah.
Yep.
in God, right? And it's like, this is your chance and your opportunity to share
Mm-hmm.
this with your family, with your friends,
Mm-hmm.
whoever's important in your life. Hey, maybe this is something that I should really think hard about. And when it got to the point where I shared, like, I said, yes, like I will be committed to be baptized. I shared this with my parents and they were not happy.
I can imagine.
Dang. Dang.
Right. And they're like,
Mhm.
okay, what do you mean you're getting baptized? Like, what do you mean you're a Christian now? Right. Because they knew
Mm.
they were okay with me going to church. And I'll tell you why later on, but they were
Okay.
okay with me going to church. And when I told them I'm moving on to the next stage, they're like, whoa, 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 what does that mean?
Next stage.
Like I'm moving, like what
Yep.
do you mean? Like what is baptism? Is that like a
Mm-hmm.
license? Like what is that?
Mm.
Because you have to think about from an Asian parent's perspective, they're like, okay, I don't know anything about church, but you're doing this thing that requires you to declare something publicly. It must be some kind of like license. It must be some kind of like weird dedication that, you're not going to be in school anymore, right?
Right.
Um, because in their context, like the way that at least my dad saw it. So both my parents were born and raised in Vietnam, but family background in general is Chinese. So World War II moved
Mhm.
from China to Vietnam, and then when the Vietnam War happened, they moved from Vietnam to Canada.
Okay.
Um, and so, during the Vietnam War, there were missionaries that were coming over, whether they're missionaries from Germany or other parts of Europe. Um, and my dad, whenever he saw a missionary, he's like, how can you be the type of person to abandon your entire family and their needs to do this,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like, how can you throw that all away? Like, you can throw away your degrees, you can throw away your life to do this? Why? But he didn't understand that. So
Right.
Right.
when he learned that I was going to be baptized, he thought I was going to be a missionary who would throw away
Okay.
everything,
Right.
right? Which, to be fair, God kind of calls us to do that.
Yeah, it's very possible.
But, it didn't mean that, and this is something that my dad and I had to talk through um, that night. And we had a lot of back and forth and arguments that night,
Mm.
purely on a misunderstanding,
Yeah.
right? And so really he thought I was like literally going to pack up and be a Mormon. If you really think about the concept, right? What was his mindset. And so, through a lot of prayer and discussion with my friends that same night, revisiting it all the next day, like got to really clarify things, and that brought my dad and I so much closer, right?
Okay.
And the reason why he shared this with me earlier, so the day before when we were having this argument, he was okay with me going to church because, when I talked about that wheel of fate with Buddhism,
Right.
when you are born a Buddhist, you're forever a Buddhist. That's part of that religion,
Okay.
right? Because you're always trying to reach nirvana, so you're always going to relive your life over and over again. So it doesn't matter what life you choose because you always go back to it,
Oh, okay.
right? That was his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when it comes to Christianity, again, he still kind of thinks that, at the end of the day, Buddhism is Buddhism. You're always a Buddhist or whatever. Like, I don't have to fight that hard. He was more concerned with me throwing how much he's worked and toiled for me rather than me going to another religion,
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
right? Which I'm just like, no, I'm still finishing this engineering degree. I don't know
So
what you're talking about.
parental concerns.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right. He was fearful of kind of where I would take my life and fearful that he might lose me
Mm-hmm.
to some foreign land, right?
Right.
Which is totally fair, right?
Yeah,
As a
that
parent,
is. That actually is.
totally fair. And so I finally got, for lack of a better word, his blessing to be baptized, because at the end of the day, you still have to honor your parents,
Yes, you
right?
do.
And so I still needed to get that permission where, like, okay, like now that you know what this all means, are you okay with it? Yes or no? And they finally said, when I say they I mean him. He finally said okay. And so with that, yeah, I mean they weren't comfortable enough yet
Mm-hmm.
to come to the baptism. I was still able to invite all my friends, which is great.
Okay, cool.
But I was able to, have my baptism, and share my testimony, get dunked, and yeah, was able to make it all happen. And obviously, like it's not transformative, the baptism,
No.
but it really solidifies
Mm-hmm.
your position, your stance to the public. Like, this is why I believe what I
Yeah, exactly.
believe.
But I
Um,
I don't want you to gloss over your dip. What were you feeling the day of your baptism?
I I was definitely nervous. I mean, I'm an introvert at heart.
Yeah.
Or I rephrase it slightly differently here. I typically call myself a social turtle, so I'm a introverted extrovert. So I've
Yeah.
got like a social battery, and when it runs out, that's when I go hide.
Yeah.
Um, but as an introvert at heart at the time, like I have zero skills in public speaking, and I've never talked in front of a room with like 600 people before.
Mm,
And to share something so deeply personal about that
yeah.
or about my life is hard, very
Okay.
hard. And so I was more nervous about, I don't want to diminish my story, and I don't want to diminish how important God was in my life
Oh,
or
definitely
is in my
not.
life. So I was more nervous than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, even before my turn, when I was hearing other people's testimonies,
Mm-hmm.
it really helped me to understand how important this is. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like baptism isn't going to save you, but baptism can save somebody else. If you
Very
really think
true.
about it, like you never know
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be in the congregation
Mm-hmm.
and how your story and how your testimony could touch the heart of somebody else. And that's truly
That is true.
God working, right?
That is true.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's not only important for you as, to profess your faith and to profess that in front of people that don't truly understand where you're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
but also to really, again, touch the hearts of those who are still either curious about God or even those who have such crazy hardship that they're
Right.
hardened against God,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
these stories can help to change
Definitely. We have a
Mm.
saying, your testimony is my testimony.
that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, when you
Hmm.
testify, it's something I can share with someone else.
Mhm.
So your story
That's
is not
right.
just for you, it's not just for me, but if I share your testimony with someone else, it spreads. And that's how people get touched by the fact that, hey, someone else that has a similar lifestyle as mine or similar experience, it
Mhm.
worked well for them. Let me give this a try as well to see what God can do for me. So it's
That's
a great
right.
Yeah.
testimony to have.
Yeah. Mhm.
So as far as now I know I brought this up before, but I want to hear it again. So as
Hmm.
far as your dunking experience, because when I did mine, I was talking my way through it the whole way. And so
Mm.
I heard the questions, but I was so focused on the water that I don't know I don't know what else was being said. So what was it like for you?
Mm. It's kind of like a climax of a movie,
Mm,
right?
Mhm.
Because you have not only the pastor there who it was my youth pastor who
mm-hmm.
baptized me. Um, you have the pastor there, you have the band beside you, you have the crowd in
True.
front of you,
Yeah.
and when he's asking you these questions, right? Like, are you committed to Christ,
Yeah.
right? Is this something that you truly want to do? It's so silent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It's like
is.
the silence before the climax, because like this
Yeah.
is a pivotal moment in your life
Mm-hmm.
that after this, again, it's not going to save you, but it's still transformative in a
Right.
way.
Right.
Um, and so this is like a turning point where everything was so silent, and my pastor's voice was reverberating through the sanctuary, and all I could say is like, I do. And I felt like my heartbeat like going fast and loud
Mm-hmm.
too,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
right? Not to say that I was like nervous, but like,
No,
dude, like
excited
this
as
is,
well, right?
yeah, yeah, it's like this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get dunked. And again, silence. It's just silence until when you come back up, it's like a huge crescendo and the band
Yeah.
plays, the crowd cheers. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
this is like a small sample, very small sample of what it must sound like in heaven,
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
Mhm.
so it was an amazing feeling. Like
Awesome.
this is it. Like you've done your testimony, you've told the world, and not only the congregation, but the heavens are literally singing and praising.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
Mhm.
You know, the
Mhm.
beautiful thing for you, Dennis, is that you had a rapport with your church prior to being baptized. Prior to that, you'd
Mm,
already done your altar call. So you had some sort of, how do I put it? You had comfortable stock in the church itself and where you're at, as opposed to when someone
mm.
comes in off the street and they make that decision then. But nonetheless, you still feel a little nerve-wracking
Oh
going through
yeah,
it, right? But
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm glad that you had that experience. What was it like? Well, I guess your follow-up afterwards would be much easier too, because it's with a church that you're familiar with.
Hmm.
So was there like follow-up with your youth pastor as far as what your walk is like, or did they ask you different questions? Did they get you more involved in the church, or was it as business as usual?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely more involved.
Hmm.
And so even though I was, away in university, I was all the way up in Oshawa, so an hour away. Um, and so even though it was an hour away, I would still come back. Not maybe not every weekend, but every other weekend
Yeah.
to serve, right? So I'd not only come back to see my parents and hang out with them, but also serve the high school fellowship, right? Um, and this is where, and I feel this today, like because I got to serve with so many of these high school students and seeing them grow up
Hmm.
now, right? And seeing how they're leading life is just so powerful to see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. And that's something that I'm still passionate about today. So how can we equip the younger generation to the point where they're able to walk with God, not only by themselves, but with others as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I got to serving more with the high school fellowship. I also got to serve more through band and worship as well, which was incredibly fun. I don't do
Mm.
as much now just because with now being an elder, it's just way too busy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now I sign the pastor's checks. That's what I do. Um, and yeah, it was just kind of like a snowball effect for a long while, just kind of thing after thing after thing. Um, and the
Mm-hmm.
dangerous part of you know, right that baptism happened, right that serving happened afterwards.
Yeah.
One thing that people always forget is while you're on fire for God, right, and you're
Hmm.
giving, you're giving, you're giving, how are you being fed, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it got to the point where I'm like, okay, like I've been serving in this high school fellowship for like 10 years,
Hmm.
you know? But when I really examined it, a lot of our friends moved away from church, or at least our church. So they might
Hmm.
have moved to a different city or whatever have you, and they're either pursuing their faith somewhere else, or
Hmm.
they've just stopped going to church,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so slowly, year after year, like our community started to go, and it got to the point where like we're just not in a small group anymore because like everybody we knew was just gone.
Wow.
And so like like my wife and I we were so thirsty to be fed,
Hmm.
and to, obviously you can pray to be fed through the Holy Spirit. You can pray for all these things,
Right.
but when you don't have a community
Community is
that,
important.
yeah, that pours into you, oh, it is hard.
Yeah.
It is
Mm-hmm.
very
Yeah.
hard.
It is.
And we got so burnt out from serving, um, to the point where I'm like, okay, and this was especially in the height of COVID too, where I just needed a break. Like I was
Hmm.
just so stressed and so
Yeah.
burnt out, where I'm like, okay, I just need to pause because I feel like I've been just over serving
Hmm.
and just saying yes to literally everything.
Hmm.
Um, and again, like because I love the church and I love who I get to serve with, um, at the same time, it's just like there's too much, and I'm not, you know, there's nothing being given into me, into my soul.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not
That's amazing.
learning anything new. I'm
Hmm.
not like no one's speaking truth into my heart except for
You're
my
not
pastor.
growing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not growing,
That's
not
church
growing.
burnout
That's
for
right.
real.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's that is something that my wife and I struggled with for a number of years.
Hmm.
And even when we paused, and part of the pausing is also having our child.
Yeah.
Um, as we paused, we're just like, I don't know if it makes sense to stay at this church anymore
Oh, really?
because like again, it our church was great, but the people that we had known were all
Hmm.
gone.
Oh, God.
And
Yeah.
when COVID came, everyone was so comfortable being at home.
True.
Um, when the restrictions were gone, when we can meet in person, we just weren't meeting in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Guilty.
Yeah.
it was literally the epitome of being a Sunday Christian.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that was hard. That
That would
was
be.
Mm.
so hard. Um, and we're so blessed to have a group of friends who, in that time, like the thing that was keeping us together was, or at least keeping me together, were two things. One was having a group of friends who go to different churches, and we're like, you know what, we're just going to do a thing together. We're going to
Right.
meet online, or we're going to meet in person, and we'll
Hmm.
do Bible studies, and this way it keeps all of us accountable and all of us fed in some shape or form,
Very true.
which was great. And another thing was, I was a part of this um, men's mentorship group at church
Okay.
because something that we had seen was there's just not enough men who are truly Christian men in terms
Yeah.
of that means in character, what that means in faith, what that means as a set of responsibilities in and out of the home. And so through both of those things, those really helped to keep me accountable and keep me growing in this honestly desert of a community at our church.
Wow.
And it was sad. Like I think we only had two friends at church that would come on and off.
Yeah.
But even then, like because they were so on and off, we're just like, oh, maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah.
But God really tugged on my heart at one point. So this is where this new position as to being part of the board of elders came, where, you know, at this time it was a pivotal moment because our senior pastor was leaving and our board was changing.
Oh man.
So our senior pastor was getting promoted to some part of the, or some role of the district, and we're getting a new board. And so new roles were coming in, and they're like, hey, because this is such a pivotal time, and you've been here at this church, you've got a lot of experience, you've got a lot of familiarity as to like where the struggles are. Like, we'd like to nominate you to be part of the board. I'm like, whoa, I'm not the age of 50. I'm not even elder age. So why are you asking me, right? Of all people, like I can't do this. You know, it's a lot of after a lot of back and forth and understanding the role, I still struggled with like I don't feel ready, and I feel like this is still an age where it's kind of time to move on, right? Like I don't have any friends here, or not a whole lot of friends that I used to. And you know, because there's no community here, does it make sense for me to work here, right, to this capacity? So I really grappled with this. And one thing that, you know, through a lot of prayer, I was praying to God, you know, God, tell me through something that maybe this is a place for me to stay and maybe I should do this role. Tell me yes or no. Close this door if it doesn't make sense, or keep pushing me through it if it does make sense. You know, later on, I had that same person who nominated me, and this is the same person who served with me in the high school fellowship as well. And he's an older gentleman. He's been serving for like 30 years at this church. And he told me, like, you know, Dennis, this is pretty special that you're getting nominated because, you know, you have the capacity to make big change, right? Like if community is something that is a struggle here, why not help to drive that change? Why, you know, and even if you were to move to another church, you don't know if that's going to be the same problem. So you're going to be chasing this thing over and over again to find that sense of community and comfort and familiarity, which again, like that's not really what we should be chasing.
Nope.
And so as this conversation was happening, I'm like, okay, like clearly my prayer is being answered here. Because I didn't even prompt this conversation. Like I didn't prompt, you know, my friend Joe to call me. He just called me out of the blue saying like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this role again. And because that conversation happened and because we talked about, you know, being able to guide this change in our church and this kind of revival in our church, I said, yeah, you know what? We'll give it a shot because clearly God is telling me to do this. Yeah, and so ever since saying yes to that, slowly but surely, like, you know, we're not quite there yet in terms of where our community is, but Eva and I are both in a small group now, and we're in the multi-generational one, so we've got, you know, kids all the way up to seniors, but we're learning life and we're learning different things from each other.
That's good.
And so, like, slowly but surely, God, through His timing and you know, through my obedience, right? It's you know, as we say yes to things, God will open those doors to us as well. And he always reassures us that I am not giving you anything that you can't bear.
Yeah.
Giving you
That's true.
these things so that you can learn from these things. Right? And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride if you really think about it. And yeah, I mean, at this point, it was just been a roller coaster of kind of chasing comfort, chasing God, chasing familiarity, chasing
Mhm.
God, and chasing community. But then through God, you get all these things
That's right.
eventually, right?
That's right. You've come a
Um,
long way from $100 bribe.
that's right. That's
There,
right. $100 bribe all the way to eternal salvation.
there you
That's a pretty
go.
good deal.
But honestly, though, I've got to say though, your parents, coming from a different religion, they handled it. I mean, I wasn't there, but from the talks, they handled it pretty well. Like I know, for some families, if the kid came home and said, "Hey, I went to someone else's religion's church," they'd be like, "What?" And they'd be
Yeah, like
happy
what are
right
they
there and
selling
there.
you?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
they handled it well. I mean, Grandma let it know how she felt from the beginning, but everyone else handled it pretty well.
That's right. Right.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful story, man. I think you're the
Yeah.
first person of a Buddhist background that's been on our show.
Yeah.
Mm,
That's amazing. That's amazing. That is
Mhm.
really good. Oh, thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing that with us. I didn't. I wanted to ask questions, but you kept answering it because your story was so in depth with like details, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you in your friend's home, but you represent your family as well in that friend's home, and you had to be a
mm,
child of exceptional nature for them to also be so kind and loving to you. But thinking of your
mm.
friend Matt's, his family, like they represented Christianity to the T when it comes to how loving we're supposed to be.
Oh
And
yeah.
initially, that's what won you over to say okay enough to go. Like
Right.
if they're like obviously God gets the full credit of it, but God brought them to where they are as a family. But I mean, if they're like the Christian families that we see on TV and those poor sitcoms, you probably wouldn't. First of all, your parents wouldn't drop you off there. Like
That's right.
they'd be better off drop you off at the YMCA. We'll be back in 8 weeks. but
Oh man.
but honestly though, I mean that family, they were the epitome. They welcomed you in. Your parents felt good leaving you there with them. They
That's
treated
right.
you well. They didn't force or pressurize. Because if they pressured you, you'd be like, no, right?
Hmm.
They handle things in such a Christian way that we don't see so commonly these days. And that's exactly what will happen. It will lead the person to the Lord if they decide to choose to. And it happened
Right.
in such a beautiful way. That's such a great story.
Yes.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, when I always think back to it, it's just, that truly is the definition of a strong Christian family who has a
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
great and incredible faith in 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 Jesus, right? And so it's it was so powerful, and I think if we each can find a way to strive towards not being perfect as a family, but striving to have that relationship with God that helps us to, not only model that love for other
Mm-hmm.
people, but to show that love genuinely to other people. So much so
Exactly.
that it's like this weird contagious um bug that gets you thinking about like what is so different.
Yeah.
And this is something that, through serving with youth, like your job is not to like convince your peers, but
Mm-hmm.
your job is to love them and
Yeah.
through
Mhm.
your actions, make them curious about why you're different.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. Well, Dennis, I want to thank you on behalf of Wesley and I for coming on the show and
Yes.
sharing your testimony. That was so beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, you're a
No
great
worries.
guest. Um, you gave us a lot of good insight, and we really appreciate you for that.
Yes. Yes.
No
So I
worries.
want
And I appreciate you guys having me on as well. So
oh,
always love,
definitely,
you know,
definitely.
chat more about
Yeah,
this.
definitely, man.